Hey guys, Collecting Community here. Welcome back to my channel where I talk about buying and selling Pokemon cards. So if you like that, subscribe to the channel. And if you enjoy this video, I would appreciate if you press that like button. So let's get into it. What are the two things that I think you have to do to be a successful seller on TCGPlayer? Now, these are my opinions based on my experiences and knowledge. So it could definitely not be the case. It could definitely be different for you. In terms of your scenario and your circumstances, right? So the first thing that I think is very crucial is TCGPlayer Direct. And by the way, these are the things if you're selling on TCGPlayer. TCGPlayer Direct is a program that you can list cards on TCGPlayer. They'll sell it for you, and then you ship cards back to them. And a lot of these things as well is because keeping in mind as a single person. So if you have multiple people, obviously is going to be different. But TCGPlayer Direct, I think is super useful and helpful because it gets rid of some of that overhead costs. Like when you ship out cards, there's shipping, there's materials and labor, right? And TCGPlayer Direct will take care of that for you. They do get a big cut for doing that, right? Like 50% of the lower end cards. So I recommend it because whenever you're shipping out cards, the overhead cost and overall shipping is cheaper. For example, when I look at my last cards that I sent back to TCGPlayer, it was 800 or so cards for $8, almost $9 of shipping. So we're talking about like a penny a card, right? So when you're shipping cards in masses and bulk, it's always going to be cheaper. And also it allows you to sell more cards, so you make more money. Now, obviously, they do take a bigger part of it because they're doing more work, but I think is really crucial to get you more orders, as well as being visible more in their website. Because if you're part of the program, at the top, they'll be like, oh, you can buy from the direct. And then when they're going through sellers, you'll also see the direct badge on there. So the first one is I think you should really be part of the TCGPlayer Direct for a lot of different reasons that I just mentioned. Second thing that I think you really should do to be successful on the platform, and I think this might be the number one thing, even if you are not part of the TCGPlayer Direct, that might not be that crucial, but this one is. And this one has to do with number of cards in your inventory. So this is the most crucial part because to make selling Pokemon cards worth it, if you don't know, there's a lot of labor. The margins are very thin. You do need to push the price of your cards up. Ignore market value. Ignore everything. You need to have a floor that makes sense. Minimum of the card price that can't go lower, right? That makes sense. However, if you do this starting off, you're not going to get any sales. This is the catch-22. This is where people are like, okay, selling Pokemon cards is not worth it. I'm out. Don't ever do it. But they never explain the nuances, the details. If you have 3,000, 4,000 cards in your inventory, I think that's extremely low. It depends what you're trying to do. If you're trying to do it a little bit more serious and a side job, it is very low. Because if you think about the convenience factor, as a buyer, you're going to the platform and you're buying Pokemon cards, you want to make sure that you can, the best way is if you can get all your cards from one place and they're the cheapest cards, right? Most of the time that doesn't happen. Most of the time the store that has all the cards know the value of their cards because it takes time to sort it. They have to pay employees. So they will list their cards in a minimum of like 15 cents, 10 cents, something like that, 15 cents. Even when the card's like 2 pennies or something like that, right? They will still do it to 15 cents because they know the value and they know that they will be losing if they send out cards that are not that threshold. Now, that is a tactic to lose on some orders, and I have done that, but I'm going to also explain on why I stopped doing that, if I can remember in a little bit. But having more cards in your inventory will make it so that if someone wants to buy a playset, 4 copies of a card, they can do so with ease. And if you have a lot of cards, then you can actually push the price of the minimum of the cards up so that it actually makes sense to ship it in your time and you're making money. And also on top of that, you could also offer a good amount for shipping. So right now, me, as someone that has 23,000 cards in their inventory, right? And a lot of it I consider higher end bulk. Now it is bulk, it is not ultra rares, right? Secret rares, stuff like that. That is different. Different animal, different ball games, those things get treated differently, right? Those cards get treated differently. But for me right now, at 23,000 cards, if I try to push, I have pushed right now to 15% or 15 cents minimum on all my cards, on holos, reverses. And I tried to push shipping to $1.99. That gave me 0 orders. That humbled me so much. I'm like, I have a lot of cards. Maybe I could do this. Nope. That gave me like pretty much 0 orders. I didn't give it too much time though. It was like less than a day, and I was just like, okay, this is not gonna work. So then I took off the shipping, and I kept the prices. It was at $1.99, right, when I didn't get any orders. So I took that off, went to 0 for the shipping, and kept 15-cent minimum for my cards. And I did get some orders, lower amount of orders. And now that I'm listing more and more cards, I've gone back up to my shipping fee to I think I'm like at 120 right now. And that's strategical because $1.22 is what you would be paying if you did on my store before, if you didn't go over the $5 threshold. So I was like, okay, people were paying $1.22 before, $1.20 should be a little bit more of a discount. Now, the reason that I'm doing that is not because I want to make less for my shipping. In fact, I want to make more. When you offer 0 for shipping, there's also a thing that if you buy more than $5 worth, then you don't have to pay that $1.22, right? $1.22. I know it's kind of complicated if you don't know the ins and outs of TCGPlayer, but when you offer free shipping, it's not actually free because they'll still charge $1.22 until they reach the $5 threshold, and then it does become free shipping. And that threshold is where I was losing. When I'm going to show you guys some examples, but pretty much when the cards end up being above $5, I don't get that $1.22 for shipping, which that $1.22 really covers TCGPlayer fees. So then I'm like at $5.15, let's say, because someone just wanted to cross over that $5, right? Maybe if I can send it all in an envelope where it takes 3 stamps, that's already $2. Plus you're taking the backings of each, that's already like 30 cents, the cards itself, so you're not really making anything. So that's why I'm offering $1.20 shipping, because it gets rid of that. If you go over $5, you're still gonna pay $1.20 shipping, which that does help me out. And in a small orders that they're paying $1.20 shipping will cover some of the other ones that I'm losing a little bit out. Where I wouldn't really be losing out in this model, having a 15-cent for minimum and $1.20 shipping, but I would make it worth it for my time and my product, my stock, right? So that's one thing. I don't even know if I'm going to keep a lot of that, if it makes any of that sense. I'm going to look back on this video. But another thing you want to understand is that if you list your cards low on TCGPlayer, the big players will buy you out. Not completely, but like what makes sense. And here's a story of what just happened recently. I had an order for $50 or so. It was 49 something. It was right shy of $50, and I wondered why. And I think it's because if you go over $50, it's mandatory tracking, and I think the buyer needs to pay a little bit more. So this buyer knew all these things. So I'm considering all these things. This buyer knew they couldn't go over 50, and bought so many 500 cards at my very bare minimum. And a lot of these were celebrations holos, which I was actually listing low as possible. So I'm thinking that this person bought 500 of my celebration cards and is going to offer them maybe even at their TCGPlayer store for like 25 cents each card, right? When they got it for like 10 cents. Now, that I wouldn't do. Is the margins you get even lower. I would just go directly to people selling the cards instead of buying from other buyers. But there are scenarios where big players will purchase a bunch of cards from people that don't know what they're doing on TCGPlayer, don't value their stock. If you put everything at what market value is, some of these cards are going to be 1 or 2 or 3 cents. I will buy you out. I will buy you out for cards I need. Like if they're Sun and Moon or older, out and they're all 1 or even 5 up to 5 cents. For those cards, I'll buy you out. So as you can see, it is strategical to have the most amount of cards, the most diverse inventory. If you can have a little bit, or ideally the most of every set, so that way when someone wants to go and buy a card they need 4 or 8 or wherever, they can get those, right? So that will allow you to actually put the price limit to where you need to have it, put the card limit minimum to where you need to have it so that you can make money. Now, the trick to all of this is number of inventories. Like I mentioned, 3,000 is super low for this. 20,000, I'm learning that 23,000 is super low for this model. What I'm trying to do, right? 100,000 starts where I'm thinking is I want to be like around 100,000. So that is my goal right now. Keep my minimums where they are, 15 cents for card, and shipping, I'm going to keep that 120, and try to just increase my inventory. I have enough cards to do so. I'm not going to stress about orders not coming in as I would like them, because I have conviction that if I have all these cards, this will work. And my conviction also comes from seeing the big players as well. I can see the previous sales, what they were going for on TCGPlayer, right? So when I see like, really, someone paid 25 cents for this card, I always wondered why. Or when someone offers $3.99 shipping and they're still paying 20 cents for a card that's like 5 cents, I always wondered why. But then when I start looking at these big YouTubers that flip and have a lot of stores, right? They're pricing it at these values, and they're selling it because they have the inventory. The inventory is king. I want you guys to really understand that. So that's where I'll leave you guys off with this video. Some of the things that I've learned. TCGPlayer Direct, I think it's a must for a single person. And I think having the most amount of inventory is king, because then you can price your cards what it should be and actually make money off of this. If you don't price your cards what it should be, not only will you lose on some orders, but it could be a possibility that you lose on majority of your orders. If you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know how to get the supplies cheap as well, a lot of factors come into play. That's it for this video. Drop a like if you liked it and subscribe. I'll see you next time. Later.